I thought I knew my sister. I thought I knew the girl who shared my childhood, my secrets, my dreams. But behind her closed doors lived a truth so dark, it shattered everything I believed about family. What I discovered did not just break my heart, it destroyed the very foundation of who I was. And once you hear what she hid, you will never look at your own family the same way again. Hi, my name is Sophia. The first memory that comes rushing back to me is not a happy one, but the sound of my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears as if the walls of the house themselves had betrayed me. I can still feel the air that night, thick, suffocating, and heavy with silence. It was the kind of silence that did not feel empty, but alive, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for me to uncover the truth I was never meant to know. My chest tightened with every step I took down that narrow hallway, the photographs on the walls watching me, mocking me, reminding me of the bond I thought my family once had. I had always believed my sister and I were inseparable, two halves of the same soul bound by blood and childhood secrets. Clara was the golden one, the one who seemed to carry a light so bright it cast shadows over me. But I never envied her. I loved her, trusted her more than I trusted myself, and perhaps that was my greatest mistake, is when the truth came clawing out from behind those closed doors. It was not just my trust that shattered, it was my entire identity. That night, as I stood frozen in the doorway, I could feel the storm of emotions building inside me. Anger, disbelief, sorrow. They swirled together until I could no longer tell which one was tearing at me the most. Betrayal is not a single strike, it is a slow burn, a creeping fire that consumes everything in its path. I could almost hear it in my bones, the crackle of my sister's lies unraveling the story of our family, one thread at a time. But before that night, before I discovered what she had done, I had lived in the illusion of normalcy. I had clung to it, desperate to believe that our family was unbreakable. My parents had raised us in a quiet suburb in the Midwest, the kind of place where white picket fences disguised the fractures within the houses they framed. We were the picture-perfect family at Sunday service, smiling wide for the neighbors, our lives appearing seamless and whole. Yet, beneath the glossy surface, something sinister had been waiting to be revealed. Clara had always carried an air of superiority, though she masked it with charm. She was beautiful in ways I never thought I could be, with her golden hair that caught the light, and her confidence that filled a room. I, Sophia, was quieter, more reserved, content to linger in the background. But I never resented her for the attention she received. Instead, I admired her, or perhaps I worshipped her, blind to the possibility that her smile could hide daggers. As I sit here now, unraveling the story piece by piece, I realize that the betrayal did not begin that night. It had been forming quietly, in shadows and whispers, long before I allowed myself to see it. I think back to the subtle signs I ignored, the hushed phone calls behind closed doors, the way she avoided my gaze when certain topics came up, the times when her laughter felt forced and brittle. The morning after that night, I awoke in a haze, as if the world had shifted on its axis while I slept. The light pouring in through the blinds was soft, golden, almost deceptive in its warmth. I remember sitting at the edge of my bed, staring at the familiar walls of my childhood room, walls painted in pastel shades that once held my innocence. But something had changed. The air itself felt heavier, my body colder, as though the truth I had stumbled upon had seeped into my bones overnight. I could not shake the image from my mind, the scene behind Clara's closed door, the secret that stripped me of every illusion I had once wrapped myself in. It played over and over in my thoughts, like a cruel film on repeat, each replay cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to believe it had been a nightmare, some distorted trick of my imagination, but the hollow ache in my chest reminded me it had been real. As I sat there, I thought back to our childhood. Clara and I were raised to be close, to be one another's confidantes, sisters who stood against the world together. My mother used to call us her two blessings. her pride and joy. We would play in the backyard for hours, our laughter carried by the summer breeze, our promises sealed beneath the shade of the old oak tree. We had sworn to always protect one another, to always tell the truth, no matter how painful. I realize now that those promises were nothing but fragile glass, destined to shatter the moment one of us decided to keep something locked away. Clara had been the sun in my world, the one everyone admired. She was radiant, magnetic, impossible not to notice. Teachers praised her, neighbors adored her, and my parents looked at her as though she were the culmination of all their dreams. I stood in her shadow, quiet and observant, too timid to compete with the glow she carried so effortlessly. Yet even in her shadow, I felt safe. I thought her light protected me, shielded me from harm. I never imagined that light could blind me to the darkness she hid within. The signs had always been there. I remember the times she would shut her bedroom door and lock it, her voice low and urgent when she spoke on the phone. I remember the way she would disappear without explanation, brushing off my questions with a casual smile that never reached her eyes. I remember the nights when she would come home late, her face flushed with a nervous kind of energy, her hands trembling slightly as though she were carrying a secret too heavy for her frame. And I remember how I convinced myself that it was nothing, that I was imagining shadows where none exist. That morning, though, I could not ignore it anymore. The betrayal I had witnessed was not a fleeting mistake. It was a carefully built life behind closed doors, one I had been deliberately shut out of. The thought that Clara had lived this double existence while standing beside me every day made my stomach twist with nausea. How long had she lied to me? How many moments had she smiled at me while keeping this truth buried? I walked downstairs, my legs unsteady, the house strangely quiet. My parents had already left for work, their absence leaving me alone with the weight of my thoughts. The walls felt suffocating, each framed family portrait mocking me with frozen smile. I studied those photographs, the four of us, arms around each other, dressed in our Sunday best, radiating an image of unity that was never truly ours. Behind those smiles were cracks I had never noticed, fractures now splitting open in my mind. As I stood in the living room, memories began to flood me, small fragments I had buried, like the time I overheard my parents whispering in the kitchen late at night, their voices tense, the word Clara spoken in hushed tone, or the time I found a letter tucked away in Clara's drawer, a letter she snatched from my hands before I could read more than a few lines, or the way she avoided eye contact whenever I spoke of the future, her gaze darting as though she carried knowledge I was not meant to share. I realized then that betrayal is rarely a sudden strike. It is a series of moments, small cuts that bleed you slowly until one day you wake up and realize you are already dying inside. Clara had been cutting me for years, and I had not even noticed. I pressed my hands to my chest, trying to still the trembling of my heart. I felt grief, but it was not the kind of grief that comes from loss alone. It was the grief of being deceived, of having the foundation of my life revealed as nothing but sand. It was grief for the girl I once was, the girl who believed in loyalty, in family, in the unbreakable bond between sisters. That girl was gone. In her place was someone raw and broken, someone who could no longer look at her own blood without tasting the bitterness of betrayal. As I stood there, I thought about the future. I knew this secret would not remain hidden forever. It would unravel piece by piece, dragging every member of my family into its cruel light. And when it did, none of us would ever be the same again. For the first time in my life, I feared my sister. The truth has a way of waiting until you are most unprepared before it unveils itself. I had carried the weight of suspicion for days, unable to escape the memory of what I had seen behind Clara's closed door. It was not something I could speak of, not. My mouth felt sealed shut by fear, as though voicing the truth would make it more real, more permanent. But the silence inside me was slowly suffocating me. Every day I watched Clara, and every day the cracks grew wider. I noticed things I had ignored before, the sly way her phone never left her hand, the way she excused herself during family dinners, her eyes flickering with guilt when she thought no one was watching. I had once thought those eyes carried love for me, but now I saw something else there. Calculation, distance, a quiet contempt she tried to mask with her perfect smile. It was on a rainy evening when the storm outside seemed to echo the storm within me, that the truth finally tore itself free. The rain pounded against the windows like fists demanding to be let in, and I sat in the living room, staring at the family portraits on the wall. My parents were upstairs, their voices muffled in conversation, and Clara was in her room with the door closed again. My heart raced as though it already knew what I was about to discover. I could not sit still. My body moved before my mind could catch up, my feet carrying me down the hallway to her door. That door that had become a symbol of everything I feared, everything I hated, everything that had been stolen from me. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle, and when it gave way beneath my grip, I felt the world tilt. Inside, the air was heavy with secret. Clara's room was meticulously clean, every detail arranged with precision, but it was not the tidy bedspread or the perfume lingering in the air that held me captive. It was the drawer half open as if daring me to look inside. My pulse roared in my ears as I pulled it open, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold on. And then I saw it. Letters, dozens of them, bundled together with a ribbon, hidden away yet not hidden enough. My breath caught in my throat as I untied the ribbon and unfolded the first one. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but the meaning was sharp, stabbing into me with every sentence. The letters were not from a stranger. They were from my father, letters written to Clara in secret, words that should never have existed between a father and a daughter, words that crossed a line so vile I could barely force my eyes to read them. I dropped the papers as though they had burned me, but the fire was already inside me, scorching my chest, my throat, my very soul. I staggered back, the room spinning, bile rising in my throat. The betrayal was not just Clara's, it was my father's too. The bond I thought I had with both of them had been a lie, a grotesque performance played out while I stood on the sidelines, blind and trusting. The rain outside crashed louder, almost as if it wanted to drown out my sobs. My knees gave way and I crumpled to the floor, clutching my chest as though I could hold my heart together with my bare hands. My mind screamed with disbelief, with rage, with sorrow so immense, it hollowed me out. Clara had known, she had accepted it. She had lived with this secret behind closed doors while standing beside me every day, letting me believe we were whole, we were unbreakable. She had allowed me to worship her while she hid something that destroyed everything sacred about family. And my father, the man who raised me, the man whose protection I trusted, he was the architect of it all. I wanted to run, to scream, to tear the walls down around me, but I could not move. I was paralyzed by the weight of betrayal, by the realization that my entire life had been built on lies. I thought of my mother, her smile so trusting, her love so blind. Did she know? Did she sense the poison festering in her own home? Or was she, like me, kept in the dark, her faith in her family twisted into a cruel joke? The truth was unbearable. It crawled beneath my skin into my veins, until I felt tainted by it, as if their sins had somehow seeped into me simply by knowing. I pressed my forehead to the floor, my tears soaking into the carpet, and I begged silently for it not to be real. But it was. The letters lay scattered around me, undeniable, merciless, and final. That was the night the betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact that tore apart the bond I once shared with my sister, a fact that destroyed the image of the father I thought I had, a fact that would haunt me for the rest of my life. And as I knelt there, broken and shaking, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Secrets like these do not remain hidden forever. When they surface, they do not just wound, they annihilate, and mine had only just begun to unravel. The days after my discovery blurred into one another, yet every hour carried a heaviness that threatened to crush me. I could not unsee what I had seen, nor unknow the words written in those letters. They followed me like shadows, clinging to my every thought. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's face, so beautiful, so untouchable, now twisted by the weight of betrayal. I saw my father's smile, once a source of comfort, now a grotesque mask, hiding unspeakable sins. I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping, my body became a shell, moving through the motions of daily life, While my soul screamed beneath the surface, my mother noticed my silence, my hollow eyes, but she mistook it for stress, for exhaustion. I could not bring myself to tell her. How could I destroy her world, the way mine had been destroyed? So I kept it inside, carrying the unbearable truth like a stone in my chest. But secrets have a way of breaking free. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day where the sun spills warmth into every corner of the house. We sat at the dining table, my mother cheerfully setting plates of food, my father reading the paper as though nothing dark had ever lived within him, Clara smiling her perfect smile. I stared at them, my stomach twisting, my hands trembling beneath the table, and then, without warning, the words spilled from me. I told my mother what I had seen. I told her about the letters, about Clara, about my father's betrayal. My voice shook, but it carried, slicing through the air like a knife. The room fell silent, unbearably silent. Before the storm erupted, my mother's face drained of color, her hands shaking so violently she dropped a plate onto the floor, the shatter echoing through the house. My father's paper slipped from his hands, his mask cracking into something raw and exposed. Clara's smile vanished, replaced by a coldness that chilled me deeper than anything I had ever felt. She did not deny it. She simply stared at me, her eyes empty, as though I were nothing more than an inconvenience who had stumbled into a truth she never intended to share. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. My mother collapsed into sobs, her body folding in on itself as though she had been struck by a blow too powerful to withstand. My father tried to speak, but his words were nothing but fragments, excuses that dissolved before they left his lips. Clara remained still, unflinching, her silence louder than any confession. In that moment, I felt something inside me harden. The girl who once believed in love, loyalty, and family died at that table. In her place stood someone else, someone who had seen the face of betrayal and survived its flames. The weeks that followed were a blur of chaos. My mother withdrew from us, her once warm presence replaced by a haunting emptiness. My father left the house for days at a time, unable to face the wreckage he had created, and Clara, my sister, my other half, drifted further into a darkness I could no longer reach. The bond we once shared had been reduced to ashes, and no amount of pleading or memory could resurrect it. But the twist came when I least expected it. Months later, after the dust had settled into a fragile routine of silence and distance, a truth even more devastating emerged. My mother, broken and hollow, finally revealed what she had known all along. She confessed that Clara was not my full sister. She was my father's child from an affair long before I was born. My mother had agreed to raise her as her own, desperate to preserve the illusion of a perfect family. The revelation struck me harder than anything before. The betrayal was not just Clara's or my father's, it was my mother's too. She had built our entire family on lies, choosing silence over truth, appearances over reality. I realized then that I had been living in a house of illusions my entire life, a house where love was only a mask, and loyalty nothing more than a word. The climax of it all was not rage, it was grief, so deep it hollowed me out until there was nothing left but echoes of the person I once was. I stood in front of the mirror one night, staring at my own reflection, and I did not recognize the woman looking back. My eyes no longer carried innocence. My smile no longer held joy. I had become someone forged in betrayal, someone who knew too well the cost of secrets. And yet within that grief, a bitter lesson revealed itself. Families can betray you in ways no stranger ever could. Blood is not always loyalty, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the very ones who destroy you. As I stand here now, telling my story, I realize that betrayal does not end with the act itself. It lingers, it shapes you, it rewrites the way you see the world. What my sister did behind closed doors did not just break me, it transformed me, and though I will carry these scars for the rest of my life, I refuse to let them define me. This is my truth, my story, my warning. The revelation that Koa was not my full sister, that she was born of betrayal long before I ever took my first breath, did not settle like a passing storm. It spread through me like poison, reaching into every corner of my life until nothing felt untouched by it. I could not walk through the house without feeling the walls closing in, whispering the truth in cruel echoes. Every photograph mocked me, my mother's forced smile, my father's hollow pride, Clara's glittering perfection. They were not symbols of love anymore. They were proof of deception, framed in gold and hung up for the world to admire. I tried to find air, to escape the suffocating weight of it all. I wandered through the town where I had grown up, streets that once carried memories of laughter, ice cream dripping down our hands in the summer heat, and winter nights bundled beneath Christmas lights. Now every corner felt like a stage where we had played out lies, a theater of betrayal with no curtain call. But what haunted me most was Clara's silence. She never sought me out. She never offered an explanation, not even a word. Her indifference was worse than denial. It told me that she had chosen her path willingly, that she had accepted my father's poison without shame, and I could not understand how the sister I once adored could stand so firmly on the side of destruction. One night, unable to bear the suffocating quiet, I found myself standing outside her bedroom door again, the door that had always held secrets, the door that had changed my life forever. I pressed my ear against it, desperate for any sound, any proof that she was still human beneath the mask. But all I heard was her breathing, steady, calm, as though she carried no guilt, no weight. My hand shook on the handle, but I could not enter, not again. My body trembled with both rage and sorrow, torn between the urge to confront her and the terror of what her eyes might reveal. It was then that a thought struck me like lightning. Perhaps Clara was not the victim of my father's sin, but his accomplice. Perhaps her silence was not born of shame, but of complicity. The letters, the glances, the way she had always lived as if rules bent around her. What if it had all been more deliberate than I ever wanted to believe? The suspicion grew inside me like wildfire. It consumed every memory, recolored every moment we had shared. I began to see her not as the sister I had loved, but as someone I had never truly known at all, someone capable of cruelty so profound it shook me to my core. I lay awake at night, my mind replaying fragments of conversations, searching for hidden meanings in every laugh, every smile. I remembered her hand brushing mine beneath the oak tree when we swore to never betray each other. At the time it had felt like a promise of eternity. Now it felt like a performance, a cruel trick to bind me to her while she planned my undoing. And as the suspicion hardened into belief, I realized that I was no longer afraid of what Clara might say. I was afraid of what she might do. Chapter 6. It happened on a night thick with unease, the air so heavy I could barely breathe. I had been lying awake, the shadows in my room shifting with every flicker of the streetlight outside, when I heard it, a sound so soft I thought I had imagined it. A creak on the stairs, a whisper of movement in the hallway. My heart pounded as I sat up, straining to listen. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, almost predatory. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath, my body frozen, the silence pressing against me like a weight. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own pulse in my ears. Then the faintest turn of a doorknob. My doorknob. I leapt from the bed, my hands trembling as I braced myself, but the door did not open. The footsteps moved away, fading into the darkness of the house. Yet the chill in the air lingered, a silent threat that burrowed into my chest. The next morning, Clara sat at the breakfast table, her expression calm, her movements graceful as she stirred sugar into her coffee. She did not look at me, not once, but I could feel it, the awareness, the tension, the quiet acknowledgement that we were no longer sisters bound by blood or love, but adversaries bound by secrets. From that day, I began to watch her as closely as she had once watched me. Every move she made felt deliberate, every silence calculated. I felt as though I were living with a stranger who knew my every weakness and who carried the power to destroy me entirely. But what terrified me most was not her silence. It was the possibility that she enjoyed it, that behind her perfect smile was a satisfaction in knowing she had shattered me, that she had reduced me to a trembling shadow of the sister I once was. The suspense of it all became unbearable. Nights bled into days, and still I lived with the gnawing certainty that something darker was yet to come. Clara was no longer just the betrayer, she was the shadow in the hallway, the silence at the table, the coldness that seeped into my bones, and I knew with every beat of my heart that the final revelation had not yet surfaced. The deepest secret was still waiting behind another closed door. The revelation that Clara was not my full sister, that she was born of betrayal long before I ever took my first breath, did not settle like a passing storm. It spread through me like poison, reaching into every corner of my life until nothing felt untouched by it. I could not walk through the house without feeling the walls closing in, whispering the truth in cruel echoes. Every photograph mocked me, my mother's forced smile, my father's hollow pride, Clara's glittering perfection. They were not symbols of love anymore. They were proof of deception, framed in gold and hung up for the world to admire. I tried to find air to escape the suffocating weight of it all. I wandered through the town where I had grown up, streets that once carried memories of laughter, ice cream dripping down our hands in the summer heat, and winter nights bundled beneath Christmas lights. Now every corner felt like a stage where we had played out lies, a theater of betrayal with no curtain call. But what haunted me most was Clara's silence. She never sought me out. She never offered an explanation, not even a word. Her indifference was worse than denial. It told me that she had chosen her path willingly, that she had accepted my father's poison without shame, and I could not understand how the sister I once adored could stand so firmly on the side of destruction. One night, unable to bear the suffocating quiet, I found myself standing outside her bedroom door again, the door that had always held secrets, the door that had changed my life forever. I pressed my ear against it, desperate for any sound, any proof that she was still human beneath the mask. But all I heard was her breathing, steady, calm, as though she carried no guilt, no weight. My hand shook on the handle, but I could not enter, not again. My body trembled with both rage and sorrow, torn between the urge to confront her and the terror of what her eyes might reveal. It was then that a thought struck me like lightning. Perhaps Clara was not the victim of my father's sin, but his accomplice. Perhaps her silence was not born of shame, but of complicity. The letters, the glances, the way she had always lived as if rules bent around her. What if it had all been more deliberate than I ever wanted to believe? The suspicion grew inside me like wildfire. It consumed every memory, recolored every moment we had shared. I began to see her not as the sister I had loved, but as someone I had never truly known at all, someone capable of cruelty so profound it shook me to my core. I lay awake at night, my mind replaying fragments of conversations, searching for hidden meanings in every laugh, every smile. I remembered her hand brushing mine beneath the oak tree when we swore to never betray each other. At the time it had felt like a promise of eternity. Now it felt like a performance, a cruel trick to bind me to her while she planned my undoing. And as the suspicion hardened into belief, I realized that I was no longer afraid of what Clara might say. I was afraid of what she might do. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage where every smile was a mask and every silence a threat. I moved through the rooms like a stranger, my body tense, waiting for the moment the final curtain would fall. I knew Clara carried something more, a truth she had not yet revealed, and the weight of that knowledge pressed against me like a storm waiting to break. One night I found myself standing before the oak tree in our backyard, the place where Clara and I had once sworn never to betray each other. The tree was bare now, its branches clawing at the night sky like broken fingers. I pressed my hand against its rough bark, and the memory of her promise echoed in my mind, cruel and mocking. I realized then that betrayal is not just about lies told, it is about the silences that follow, the truth withheld until they rot everything they touch. When I returned inside, the house was cloaked in shadows. My parents had drifted into their separate silences, my mother moving through the days like a ghost, my father avoiding us altogether. Clara sat at the table, her face lit by the glow of a single lamp. She looked up at me, and for the first time she held my gaze. Her eyes were not guilty, they were not ashamed, they were triumphant, as though she had won something I never knew we were fighting for. That was when it struck me. The betrayal had never been an accident. It was power. Behind those closed doors, Clara had not just hidden a secret. She had claimed something that was never meant to be hers. My father's love, my mother's silence, the very fabric of our family. It had all been bent to her will. And in her eyes that night I saw the final truth. She was not my sister, she was my rival. I felt a coldness sweep through me, sharp and final. I understood then that I could no longer cling to the idea of saving what we once had. The bond we shared was dead, buried beneath years of lies. All that remained was survival, mine, not hers. I turned away from her gaze, my heart breaking and hardening all at once. I walked upstairs, each step heavy with the weight of everything I had lost. As I closed my bedroom door, I whispered to myself the only truth I could carry forward: families can destroy you from within, and the sharpest knives are the ones held by those you love. That was the end of my innocence, the end of my faith in blood. And though the scars of what my sister did behind closed doors will remain etched into me forever, I refuse to let them silence me. This is my story, my truth, and my warning. What my sister did behind closed doors did not just shock me, it remade me. I sit here now, staring into the silence, knowing that nothing in my life will ever be the same again. My sister's betrayal was not just a secret, it was a wound carved so deep it will echo through me forever. The home I once trusted has become a memory I can never escape, a reminder that the greatest dangers do not come from strangers, but from those we let closest to our hearts. But this is not just my story, it is a warning, a reminder that even the people you love the most can hide shadows you never imagined. And when the truth finally breaks free, it will not knock softly, it will tear everything apart. I have carried these scars into the woman I am today. I have learned that blood is not always loyalty, and trust can be a weapon placed in the wrong hands. My sister taught me that behind every closed door there can be a truth that changes everything. If my story has moved you, if you felt the weight of betrayal with me, then stay with me. There are more truths to uncover, more stories that will leave you questioning the very meaning of family, love, and loyalty. So subscribe now. Do not miss the next story. Walk with me into the shadows, because what lies behind closed doors will shock you too.